What's up, sexy people of the internet? It is Dave, it is Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. For this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, post-hardcore shoegaze band Spanaway. The band's new album, Songs of Yesteryear, will be released on December 6th via Burial Whisper. So, Spanaway's roots lie in the Pennsylvania and New Jersey hardcore scene. Guitarist Robbie Venna discusses how, for him and his bandmates, Spanaway's gorgeous, haunted sound is the next step after the explosiveness of hardcore. We all found each other through hardcore, and that is certainly our cornerstone sonically. Hardcore manifests as this erratic, dangerous, and transient explosion. But once the dust settles, there's an emotional fallout. Surviving the blast and braving the mental dystopia is where our biggest influences lie. I think Converge succeeded on Jane Doe, American Nightmare on We're Down Till We're Underground, and Texas is the Reason on Do You Know Who You Are. Initially banding together under the name Blush, the quartet made the decision to move forward under the new name of Spanaway last year, merely for practical purposes to avoid confusion and conflict with a myriad of other projects bearing the same name. Songs of Yesteryear is a perfect album, a series of 10 unforgettable tracks, each one transmitting the real, authentic pain of its makers. At its worst, sad music is nothing more than self-pity and self-indulgence. Spanaway's work is the opposite, sad music that exists to connect and uplift humankind. If nothing else, states Venna, we hope these songs can be a comfort to others who are struggling, to know their suffering is not in vain. The album was recorded, engineered and mixed by Zach Weeks at God City Studio, then mastered by Magnus Lindberg.
Lindberg's been a busy guy this last year, considering that like you jump back to 5 years ago, his name ain't popping up a huge amount, and now all of a sudden it's appearing quite a bit, and I'm kind of loving it.
Yep. So, so we're finally into our December releases. We're getting to that stage of the year.
Yeah, we have had, like, let's be fair, right? Last year we were like that. This year's just been exceptional for music, and you know what? We're kind of at that point where, like, can it be top? Can it be top? Can we go any further forward? And about June mark, we were fucking exhausted with this year, right? Like, it was just like it was so much.
Yeah.
And it's continued. It has continued at pace that this kind of melancholic sort of December that we're experiencing, and the series of reviews that we've done tonight with a theme, is kind of welcomed by me. There's a kind of reflective nature when you get into the end of the year anyway, where you kind of look back, and very seldom in a movie setting when the main character is kind of looking back over things that have happened or the year before does rapid bestial death metal play. It's mostly something a little bit more chill. And Spanaway certainly fit that bill, so let's put it that way.
For sure. Yeah, there wasn't like a huge amount of stuff on the December release list that I was like, oh, I'm really like dying to hear that. But then there's also like albums that come in that I have no idea about.
The exciting stuff.
And Spanaway was one of those bands and albums that came in. I was like, all right, okay, shoegaze, you say? Interested? Tell me more. I had nothing, like no prior involvement or knowledge of the band at all. So this one definitely piqued my interest. So, Songs of Yesteryear by Spanaway. What did you think? What did you make of this one?
So, like, I'm a walking contradiction, Dave.
Oh, okay.
Because a lot of people look at me and they look at this peppy, young, is never really used, but look at this guy who's like, he smiles a lot, he laughs a lot, he cracks a lot of jokes. You know what? He must be a fun guy. Right? And truth be told, like, I tend to be able to put a happy spin on things, but as a human being, I'm a very introspective person. Like, I overthink. That's why I don't sleep particularly well. But I overthink things. I overanalyze things. Like 5 minutes in my brain at times is like fucking 20 years in solitary confinement. Like, for anyone who's like, I'm sorry I did that crime. I didn't mean to. I do, and I'm comfortable with myself, but I'm acutely aware that I am very difficult, right? That's why I let my wife off with a lot, right? Because I'm like that. I understand what's happening right now, but also you have to live with me, so I forgive everything that's happening. The band made a really interesting observation about like just writing sad music for sad music's sake, and there are a lot of bands that do that. There's a lot of indie bands that have kind of cornered the market of we just write things with this kind of melancholic sort of sheen on it, and it kind of exists out there for people that they're having a bad day and they want to listen to something faux sad. To kind of fit the mood. It's elevator music for people that want to be sad, right? That's literally it. Yeah. And then there's other bands out there. A recent example is the absolutely incredible self-titled album from Foxing, which exists in this bubble of like there's something infinitely sad about what they write, but it's relatable. It kind of feels like a well-worn shoe. Like, there's something kind of just like instantly comforting about it. You just feel like you've been there before. Songs like Yesteryear is a fucking incredible name for an album, because if you're my age, this band where all the influences, all the bands that I've grew up listening since since I reached like 14 and maybe got my first pubic hair, you know what I mean? Like it's all that awkwardness and that social anxiety and the kind of where do I fit in, what do I want to be, who do I want to be, you know, will I ever get a girlfriend, will I ever find love, you know, will I ever lose my virginity, will I will I ever relate to people, will I ever have friends, like will I ever have a job? It's all those like what if moments that kind of are spaced throughout your lifetime, to the point where you eventually get a lot of those things that you felt would be the things that if I just do this, then everything's going to be great. And if I just get this and everything, and you realize you're 43 and you've got all those things, and actually still there are moments where like to me it's when will I grow up? Like, is the ultimate thing. Like I am still, I'm like a 17-year-old trapped in a 43-year-old. Like, when will I grow? When will I become responsible? When will I like take my life more seriously than I do? And like songs like Yesteryear kind of weirdly articulate this kind of almost kind of red web line of this leads to this, and then back to this, and then this. A kind of a weird, bizarre, kind of almost mind map of anxiety, and it's not sad. Like, this album is not a sad album by any stretch of the imagination, but there is a kind of poignance in the way that the music is delivered that kind of feels like a kind of late 90s, early 2000s indie like drama comedy. Like, you know, like a Juno or something along those lines, like where you're like, those movies were popular because people didn't want to watch like rom-coms where the awkward geek gets the beautiful girl at the end and then they walk off into the sunset, because that seldom happens in real life. They're just more relatable. There were stories told that finished at points that never felt like a finish. And this album kind of feels like an album that never really finishes with a defined and close. It opens. It weirdly feels like I said before, like a snapshot of different time periods or different like feelings or different anxieties kind of captured overall. It wears its influences on its sleeve. I mean, I know what we're saying, shoegaze here. It's a huge swath of fucking 90s indie here and alternative. I love that, right? I'm old enough to remember all that shit, and then it kind of makes me feel happy that bands are kind of capturing that now. But also has that kind of jingle jangle, so to speak, of a kind of Deftones. That's kind of in there as well, without the kind of mogwai sort of sheen over the top of it. Without like going around the houses and realising I've spent 10 minutes talking about feelings, anxiety, and everything else, let me say I really enjoyed this album.
Okay.
For a couple of big reasons. The one thing that kind of captured me is that I think there's a lot to glean from this, and the songwriting specifically. It never really, if I was drawing a box, right, I could put a comfortable box around this album. And it's not going to go beyond those lines, right, throughout its runtime listening. I mentioned this on another review where I kind of felt like I had a comfort in that box that existed. The thing about Spanaway is I think the box that they're in is slightly bigger.
Yeah.
And they use that space more creatively. Like the guitar work on this is absolutely fucking great. It has those big kind of Deftonesy sort of chords without the detune. With those moments where it reminded me of bands like, once again, like Smashing Pumpkins, or kind of later 90s, early 2000s bands like My Vitriol, or where they kind of capture like a much broader, bigger scope. And that production really aids it. Like it really, it has like a warmness about it, like just like something that feels like this isn't the first time you've listened to it. Like this has been played a few times before it's given to you.
Yeah.
Vocally, I adore this. I love the tone of the vocals. It's soft, but it's emotive. It's kind of like it's almost like the echoes of a faded memory, and the way it's delivered. Like I feel like even if I didn't know what he was singing about. See, if I was foreign and I was listening to this, I would know exactly what he was singing about. I just feel like I've lived it. Every line of this, I feel like I've lived at some point. I also think there's something in the song composition and the flow of the album as well. This is on the longer side of the albums we reviewed. For this week, and I can sometimes be overtly critical of things where I'm like that. I know what your sound is, so and you've given it to me early on. Do I need the length? And there are certain bands that can pull off that need for length, and others that 25 minutes, 30 minutes in, I'm like that. Chick, please. This one I feel really benefits from the length. I found myself being more inclined to, like, by the time the final track finishes, which is Walks Through Yetter, which is it's about 7.5 minutes in length, which is like clearly the longest song here by well over 1.5 minutes. I did kind of feel like if there was a coda, if there was another song on here, I'd be all right with it. Which is really interesting because like that closing song feels like the band trying to put a level of finality on it, but to me it just kind of felt like the next question that requires an answer. I really, 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 really dug this. Like, I did a lot of traveling in the last week, which required me to spend a lot of time away from my family in hotel rooms, and I notoriously sleep less when I stay away from home. So when you're sitting in a darkened hotel room at night and you just want to drift off or focus on something else or just contemplate, Songs of Yesteryear is a really fucking good album to do that. But it has teeth.
Yeah.
Like they capture that kind of late 90s, early 2000s like grasp of we need something a bit heavier to sit alongside these quieter moments. Bemoaning is a great track that encapsulates that because it starts off very, very, very soft, and you'd be forgiven for thinking from its runtime that this is going to be a track that's just going to meander its way through. And in the last third, it finds a distortion pedal. And then the vocals go softer, which is weird. Like, kind of like the guitar's heavier, so the vocals can go softer. And there are all these imaginative moments in the way they craft their songs all the way through, where they either circumvent expectation or deliver exactly what you want, but in a surprising way. Like, I know this song is going to go floaty here, and then the floaty segment comes in, you're like, all right, but I didn't know you were going to do that with the bass.
Mm.
You know, like just elements where it kept me on my toes whilst being kind of predictable, which once again feels like I'm like weirdly being oxymoronic with my descriptions, but it's just how I felt.
Yeah.
On my last point here, is specifically about the choice of production. It has a kind of modern vibe about it for sure. It's a very like kind of 2024 sort of shoegazy production, but it somehow manages to capture a lot of the elements of that kind of 90s alternative, and specifically early 2000s kind of wash of kind of post-hardcore, post-Deftones, White Pony sort of sims that were out there in that particular early, that first chunk of the 2001, 2007, that era. Captures all that in a really creative way. I kind of think these guys are fucking awesome, if I'm honest. It's one of those ones that, like, Dave curates a list of what we review, and I'm always kind of on the back foot with things with you because I never know what mood's taken. Like, what is the reason this has made the list?
Yeah.
It generally is a producer or there's a keyword or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the studio this was recorded in is maybe one of the reasons it's ended up on the list. But even then, like, had you just told me this had been recorded at Godsend Studios, I would have been sitting there going, all right, I kind of think I know what's coming. I would have been surprised there as well.
Yeah.
On the back end of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really, 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 really good album. I think these guys are fucking awesome. And yeah, I don't know where else to without like going song by song, which I kind of feel like there's not a huge amount of gulf between any of these songs where I'm like, and this is where they dropped it. Like, there isn't that. It's an experience.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like the way I would describe this on the out here is there are certain soundtracks to certain movies that just evoke just a vibe of a movie. And I always come back to two great examples when discussing kind of indie and alternative. The first one is an indie horror movie called The Battery, where the whole score is just these kind of folksy Americana sort of bands, and the soundtrack is pivotal to what you listen to. The second one I'll mention is there's a guy called Sean Spillane who did the score to a movie called The Woman, which is this indie horror movie which is deeply dark, but the soundtrack isn't. The soundtrack is this kind of indie jangly sort of thing, but against the backdrop of what you're seeing, it makes it more severe, and I don't know how. Spanaway have captured a vibe and a weird kind of indie uncomfortability in your own skin, a social awkwardness that doesn't feel awkward to listen to, but is instantly relatable to anyone who at any point in their life was a teenager.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It just captures that in a way which I think Weezer have been trying to do since Pinkerton. You know, it's all the way through this fucking album. So yeah, that's how I will finish what I'm saying. Okay. I'm curious on you because you like me have dipped from the well, have drank it deep on Shoegaze this year. And earlier on today you were reviewing a Shoegaze album. We were like that. I had to stack this up against stuff I've heard this year.
Yeah.
When I did that, it maybe didn't cut the mustard in the same way.
Yeah.
How did you get on with Spanaway?
Weirdly, the first couple of times I tried to listen to this, I struggled to stay in it.
Right.
And I think it might have been because we were reviewing another Shoegaze album this week.
Yeah.
And I think I was starting to get a bit of a burnout with the genre.
We've done a lot of it this year. Even when we've not been reviewing Shoegaze, Shoegaze has been over everything this year.
Yeah,
so
a wee bit shoe blazed, if you know what I mean. However,
can I boo you right now?
Yeah,
can we get a boo sounder in here?
However, I kind of left it for a couple of days and just kind of started listening to other stuff again, and then I went back to it without listening to shoegaze before directly going into this album. And my third listen to this album was much more positive. This is an album, a shoegaze album that ticks a lot of the boxes you'd expect from the genre. It's very dreamy, it's warm, the production is lush and clean, and plenty of reverb to give it size and atmosphere. It has all the key elements, and those elements will remind you of other bands in the genre. You know, I was getting hints of the band Nothing, bands like Failure as well. That definitely comes through, which, to be honest, I was all good with. Like, I'm a big fan of both of those bands, so it was very comfortable for me. But there was also a few other elements that kind of crept into this that I wasn't completely expecting. Still genres that are, you could say, are still in the same bubble. Alternative and indie being two of them. There was almost a kind of like, it's not doomy, but there's a kind of doom pop kind of vibe to this at times.
We've talked about this. Doom sits, like, doom and shoegaze to me are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Like, by design, one is like they both at their core do exactly the same thing. It's just they're trying to evoke completely different responses.
Yeah. It's like another shade of doom, I suppose, that I would say, which takes the songs in a slightly more kind of melancholic kind of tone.
Dude, if we ever decide to do music again, our album is going to be called Another Shade of Doom. That's fucking, like, that is an album title if ever there was one, dude, honestly.
Let's copyright that shit right now.
Yeah. Copywritten 28th of November 2024. Right.
But I liked, you made a point earlier. I liked the way the tracks don't, you know, just sit in a kind of hazy, kind of shoegaze, clean tone the whole way through. They do get more dynamic at times, where they use this kind of like building technique on, and you mentioned Bemoaning, you also get it on like Chatterbox and Poppy Seed as well, where the tracks build into this really like satisfying kind of climax. And then you've also got tracks that kind of like dip in and out of the heavier sound. Kenny's Song or Twin Faced Angel were good examples of that.
Twin Faced Angel.
Where, so they do kind of tweak the formula ever so slightly throughout the album, which I really liked. The one track that is a little bit different, which when I heard it, I was like, I really hope they come back to that again. Yeah. Like, track 3, it's a track called 27. And this one's got like a slightly more like folky vibe, but with almost like a kind of post-rock kind of feel at times as well. There's like a bit of trumpet in there, trombone. There's some piano in there. There's also a guest vocal from
the battery, Dave.
The battery.
I'm saying, the battery. That's what it made me think of.
Yep. Brie MC is the guest vocal, and it's a great track, like a really, really standout track. I loved all the little additions they added. It's got a really good hook, and the peak of the track is kind of layered with male and female vocals, but it's got this brass over it. It just sounds delicious, like just an absolutely tremendous track. And I was like, oh, that was fucking amazing. But they don't come back to it. Like, yeah, that doesn't come back in the album at all. And I understand, like, these are guest musicians they've got in on that track and a guest vocal, so they're technically not part of the band.
But you could make them part of the band.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Like, I was thinking, oh man, you could really open this album up even more with those elements. But that's fine. Like, they didn't come back to it. That's fine. That's not to say that other tracks aren't as good, because there's a lot of great tracks on this release which come with really great hooks. The track that follows 27, the track called Terrible, and it's excellent. Like, Zach, who's the vocalist of the band, he has a voice that is he is made to sing this style. Like, he has got an incredible tone. His voice is light and breathy, and it just fits perfectly with the kind of elegance of the guitars, and there's a bit of little synths as well that come in and out of that track. And the thing is, his vocal doesn't like change all that much in intensity, but he just has a really nice sound, and like that kind of lower register that he dips into on tracks like Bemoaning, it just like, it's so warm and really just, it adds another kind of level to the vocals. I also really like the way they connected Twin Faced Angel and Burn to Lose. They do that through the sound of like crashing waves. So it kind of joins the tracks up, which is really cool. And it really works because like Twin Faced Angel is only like, it's less than 3 minutes, like 2 minutes 39 or something. So that track doesn't feel like excessively long, but the two tracks together just really complement each other. I thought it was a really interesting choice. There's also some really heavy Jesu vibes on Born to Lose, which just warmed my heart a little bit. Not gonna lie, loved that. Spaceman as well. Spaceman's an interesting track where it didn't really have like distinct parts of like, oh, this is the verse and this is the chorus. It felt almost kind of just like free flowing, almost kind of like just continual, where it was almost like a kind of breathing moment before the album closer, which is Walks Through Yetter, which I'm not entirely sure what Yetter is. Is Yetter a place, or what is Yetter? I don't know.
While you are doing that, I will find out, Dave.
I've no idea. But that track definitely had a feeling of like something quite deserted, something quite open. It's got this real kind of like woozy kind of pace to it, and it just kind of ends the album on a really kind of nice note. I really like the kind of spaciousness of that last track. It was a really nice kind of end. It kind of gives you everything you'd want from like a shoegaze album, but also with a few really kind of interesting extras to keep you enticed. I think when you're in the right mood, and you're looking for something just to kind of immerse in and switch off, like this absolutely nails the brief. Production just finally is just fucking lovely. Like this, I swapped the in-ears for my big headphones.
Of course you did, Dave.
Because when I did get into this album, I was like, all right, I need to listen to this on something better. And it's really rich. There's some real kind of vibrant moments on the album as well, but then there's also stuff that feels quite worn, like you say, and almost kind of retro. That track 27 definitely has a kind of older feel to it. But there's a lot of great detail in the instrumentation here, like lots of atmosphere to just kind of get absorbed in. I am not sure, like if you played this to me and asked like who produced this album, I don't think I would have paired Zach Weeks and Magnus Lindberg on this at all.
No.
But it works brilliantly. Like it's a great choice. Like everything that comes out of God City Studios sounds fucking amazing anyway.
Amazing, yeah.
And Magnus Lindberg is probably known for heavier stuff, like obviously doing a lot in the kind of post-metal realm, but great choice. Like this sounds incredible.
Like, even when we think about post-metal though, what does post-metal has a kind of grandeur in the space? Like there's no space wasted there, and then which kind of makes sense here.
Yeah.
Incidentally, the closest I can get to what Yetter might be, Yetter is apparently in Iowa.
Right.
And at the last census, there was 19 people that lived there. So I get the feeling that it's possible either that or it's a redundant word from the 1500s of Norse origin, which I'm assuming it isn't that probably because of where they are. But there's a place
does make sense then.
Yetter, Iowa. Population 19.
I imagine that's quite a barren kind of place then. If there's only 19 people, so that does make sense. I thought this was great. Like I really enjoyed this album. And like once I kind of clicked with it and connected with it, I wanted to keep coming back to it because there's just a lot to really enjoy in this release. Okay, final thing, scores for Songs of Yesteryear. What are you thinking for this one?
So, like, in the last year, I don't talk about this much, but in the last year, I've really found myself, like, depending on the mood, depending on how I'm sleeping, depending on what's happening, there are certain albums that will chill me the fuck right out. Like, I mean, like, you put them on and I'm just like, oh, it's like this, like, fucking, like, audio equivalent of morphine, right? And one of them it's an older album, and I only found it, like, in the last, like, 7-8 months, so it's not one there like that. You know, like this hidden gem. I think the band are pretty big. I think the band are called American Football. You ever listened to them? And they have a self-titled album from like 2019 called American Football. There's a particular track on that called Doom in Full Bloom, I think is what it's called. Doom in Full Bloom. I might be wrong about that. I might be getting the words. It might be Full Doom in Bloom. I can't remember. But it's an album that it's a song specifically on the album. The album is very chill, but that one song is just like it's just hauntingly beautiful, right? Just like one of those ones that's just instantly just I feel like this wave of euphoria that just comes over me and just settles down. Spanaway's album encompasses that for me. I think they managed to capture like all the stuff I mentioned about feeling uncertain in your skin, but also weirdly, like it just like every song just made me think of a moment I've experienced in my life, and I'm still here. So like there's kind of some weird optimistic view of it.
Yeah,
and it captures so much, and it does so much, whilst not necessarily breaking that box confine that I mentioned before. I'm coming in 4.5 on this one. I think this is really, really, really fucking good. And like once again, we've listened to a lot of music this year, a lot that encompasses in this genre. But I think this band are kind of special. I'm stressing this right now. Spanaway are one to watch.
Yep. I'm gonna come in exactly the fucking same, Duncan.
Oh, nice.
4.5 for me as well. I feel like there's something about this band that is just a little bit different, like a little bit. They're a little bit ahead of the game a little bit, and I can see this band evolving even more over time.
Yeah.
Like just with the little bits they've showed you, little kind of glimpses of greatness on this album, like you could do something really special in the future. I've got a feeling this is not the last we've heard of Spanaway, and I've got only feel like they're going to get bigger and better over the next few years. So definitely keep your eyes on Spanaway. So a 4.5 from me as well. Comes out on the 6th of December on Burial Whisper. I'll put a link to the band below and their Bandcamp so you can check it out, and a single as well. That is the review. Thank you for checking out. Much appreciated. We'll be back very soon with another review. But until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.